Hey, it's Inve. I'm here with a video on how I think the guys over at From Software are going to be eliminating some common quitting points for new players in Armored Core 6. Uh, Before we get started, I would like to ask you guys to subscribe. We're really close to 1,000 subs, and that's where I get to monetize, which would be really big for me. With that out of the way, I'd also like to thank Cleric from Armored Core Online for posting this. I'll have a link to his channel down in the description, and Phantasmar for mentioning this in the first place, because I probably wouldn't have thought about this without his help. I'll also have his channel linked down in the description. Moving on into the meat and potatoes, I want to talk about OS tuning, and how it will maybe prevent people from quitting the game as quickly as they might have quit something more complicated like 5th gen. Now, that might be a slightly incendiary remark to say that AC6 is simpler than 5th gen right off the bat, and of course, I don't directly know any of this. This is a lot of inference, as I wasn't able to play the game. But from what we can tell from the OS tuning menus, it's pretty clear, I think, that From Software is intending to funnel mechanics that players traditionally have had a harder time coming to terms with into a system where they have to actively think about unlocking that mechanic. The first one I want to mention is the weight control system unlock. This system allows you to unlock something that has been a core part of all of the Armored Core games in the past, which is manually purging your weapons. Manual purging might not sound like that big of a deal, but it is super huge. For the game plan of any tank AC, you will be purging your weapons to, keep your enemy in your appropriate ranges, or if your enemy changes ranges, you'll purge weapons to swap to a weapon that can keep them at an appropriate range. On lightweight ACs, you'll frequently purge weapons to gain back energy regen or to cut weight so that you can move faster. Something really interesting, though, is that without unlocking this, you're unable to launch a sortie when your AC is overweight. And that's the first time I think you've ever been prevented from actually starting a mission if you are overweight. Currently, in AC games, if your AC is overweight, then you'll start the mission with a big penalty to your speed, and purging your weapons may make you no longer overweight, or it may not. Usually you want to aim to not start when overweight. Now, with that description out of the way, you might be asking, how is that going to stop a player from quitting the game? One of the biggest contributors to players quitting Armored Core games, in my opinion, is their lack of knowledge of what their robot is capable of doing. The example that springs first and foremost to mind is the auto sight system in Armored Core 4 Answer. A lot of players don't understand that it completely exists, even. I think that having to actually purchase a mechanic out of a list of mechanics that are selected for your AC will force players to recognize mechanics much more easily, even when they might be a little bit more obscure to activate. In the example of auto sight from 4 Answer, like I mentioned, you need to not be touching the right stick at all for that to work most of the time. A lot of players don't know that, either because the game doesn't adequately explain it, or because they didn't read the tutorial tidbit well enough. But in either case, having a description of the mechanic, how to use it, and having to have the player actively engage with that description to be able to use said mechanic, I think will force people to have a better idea of what's possible for their robot to do. Another mechanic that people frequently had trouble with in 4 Answer that's in this list is Assault Armor. In that game, it's not necessarily so clear that you need to equip an Assault Booster to use Assault Armor. I know when I say it out loud like that, it sounds pretty clear, but trust me, the presentation leaves much to be desired. Versus in Armored Core 6, where Assault Armor is shown as requiring an unlock, and within the description of the unlock it says you need to have it equipped. It also says L plus Y while equipped to activate Assault Armor. Once again, I think this is aimed directly at players who had trouble with this kind of thing in prior games, and no shade on them. The games are really complicated. There's a bunch of numbers and words, and a lot of it doesn't necessarily make the most sense on a first glance. So On that note, all this has been kind of from the perspective of someone who hasn't played these games before coming into the games and how it might help them. I want to talk about things a little bit from the other side, as someone who enjoys playing the Armored Core games online and who plays a good amount of multiplayer, as well as talk a little bit about the thoughts of the person I mentioned earlier, Phantasmar, who brought this up to my attention in the first place. Again, go subscribe to him. His channel's down in the description. So what do I think? I think this system is pretty good. Honestly, I think that forcing people to unlock each individual piece to learn how to play the game will probably force them to learn more effectively than just a standard tutorial would, or rather how it has in the past. I think it is going to be a little bit annoying to basically always have to grind the arena immediately upon starting an AC game, or upon starting this game. But I pretty much do that anyway in a lot of the old games, is I just rush the arena first, so I don't think this is going to affect me that much. Now, one thing that is odd to me though is weapon purging being on an unlockable and being able to start overweight being on unlockable. I feel like that takes away a little bit of the management portion of the game by not allowing you to start with a poor loadout from the beginning of the game, even if you might want to, just because you ignored some information on the screen, which I feel like that's part of the Armored Core experience. You know, accidentally going in overweight and just getting absolutely destroyed while moving at 2 miles an hour in some random story mission. But on the other hand, I do understand why you would not necessarily want a new player to have that experience, because again, it's kind of a quit moment for some people. If you spend 2 hours building your AC and you go into a mission but you didn't notice that the weight bar was orange and not white, suddenly you've just wasted a bunch of time. And while it might only be a small change to fix that, for a lot of people that small change and that small annoyance can be a big turn-off for the game. So on to my buddy Fanta's opinions. He is a longtime AC player, and this stuff is going to be paraphrased, so if I say anything particularly stupid, just assume that he said it better than I did in the original message. So, in his thoughts, it feels odd to take away basic functions and reintroduce them to people because it's overwhelming. And I kind of agree with him there. In his eyes, having to take away functions so that people can more effectively learn them feels a little bit limiting to players who would be able to deal with having that breadth of options available to them from the start of the game. While it may only be a minor inconvenience for those players, the basic functions of your AC being locked behind an unlock for the benefit of newer people to the series feels not so great sometimes. Again, I am partially of the same mind, but also I think that FromSoft is potentially making a good decision with this because it will force people to know exactly what all their buttons are because they paid something for those buttons, even if that something is a couple of arena opponents who historically have been a little bit of pushovers. So what do you guys think? Is this a good change that is going to help ease people in and minimally affect veteran players who are coming back? Or is this just a piece of casual core annoyance that they've tacked on? Talk to me in the comments. Leave that down below. Since we're at the end of the video here, if you stuck around, I'm just going to talk for a second. With all this footage being out, my life as a news person is a little bit more challenging. And I mean, you might be thinking, how is it more challenging that you have more footage? It should be way easier. But the real truth of the matter is, I haven't played the game, so a lot of what I have to say is less relevant than the people who got to play the game. So I'm probably going to be doing a lot more opinion-based stuff, and I'm planning on uploading a playthrough of Armored Core 1 here soon. I think I'm about halfway through that. Please stay tuned if you want to see that kind of stuff. And I hope you've been enjoying the videos. Like I have been begging for a minute, please sub. Would love to make some money off this. And truly, thank you guys for watching.